we are living in a renaissance, which is, there's a grassroots creative movement. Well, that is exciting.
Almost inherent to being human and being alive to have new ideas, creative ideas that are responding to needs in your local environment as it is to breathe. We wouldn't be here were we not every day coming up with new ideas. And the younger we are, the more original they are for lots and lots of reasons.
So would it be fair to say it's taken 21 years to be an overnight success?
Yeah, that's actually really very true. And I guess just to go a little bit further into that, I think you never know as a creator when your idea will impact or matter to many, many, many more people than you.
Creativity leads to individuals growing, society growing in the right way. That's absolutely fascinating. Hi everyone, from Round Glass, this is Living with Sunny. I'm your host Sunny Singh. I'm here with my friend Thomas Power. Today as our guest, we have Dr. David Edwards, who's a professor, who's an author, who's an inventor. We're going to talk about invention and creativity at a grassroots level and how there's a new renaissance in living that's taking place with creativity at its core. Welcome, David. One of the things you say is that in the world of creativity and invention or evolution, the less you know, the better.
I do say that. That's true, and that's a double-edged sword. Actually, being ignorant. When one is ignorant, one is quite vulnerable. One tends to be more mindful when one's ignorant. And particularly when one knows one's ignorant. And so, what you find is with pioneers who have been inventing or creating for a long period of time, they tend to place themselves in circumstances where they are innocent again. Now, we all remember the first time we were innocent and coming into a new school or some kind of a new environment and probably hated that experience. And there's no guarantee in being innocent or ignorant that one is going to make something of it. But I'll just finish my comment on that and saying that one of my favorite books is written by an author at Columbia University in New York called Ignorance, and is just pointing out that ignorance is really one of the most undervalued qualities in the scientific world.
Tell us, you've done a lot in the world of creativity and inventions. What are you up to now? What are you doing now?
Well, my work, Sunny, has led to a product that's called Fend, and really the most important work that I've ever been engaged in. It's a project that I've been working on in many ways for the last 20 years. Fend is hydration for the upper airways, and it's become of particularly significant importance and urgent importance over the last couple of years because of COVID-19. So this is a new right that allows people to, a few times a day, keep their upper airways hydrated. And I'll finish by saying that three real big benefits here. One is acute and chronic respiratory disease from COVID-19 to allergies. And two is better oxygenation in athletic circumstances or any circumstances. And finally is the alleviation of anything related to effective function of the larynx from cough to voice.
And David, how did you go about inventing that? Can you take us through that journey from I've got this idea, I've got this need, to actually having a product in your hand? Because that's not easy.
Yeah, that's interesting. So thank you for that, Thomas. So sort of describing how an idea came about is either a very long process or it can be very short. And so I want to try and do something that's on the short end and just say that this idea has been evolving since the anthrax scare back in 2001. And I had invented inhaled insulin, and so I was called to Washington, D.C. to help. There was a big meeting right after, like in November of 2021, asking how do we protect people from things like inhaled anthrax. And so I had this idea that, well, maybe it's easier to protect people from anything. And so I had done work early on in applied math, as I mentioned. And so I had this idea, and I'm just going to mention three ideas, Thomas, in the last 20 years that led to this idea. One was that idea then, well, maybe we could deliver lung surfactant to the airways and it would help get rid of these little respiratory droplets that people talk about a lot today. And so we did that in a human study, and it was phenomenally a failure, actually. And so I remember waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and saying, gosh, that's interesting. But the placebo control seemed to work. And so I thought, oh, what does that mean? And so it led me to discover that salts in the airways have this really important effect. And so race forward to the COVID-19 pandemic, and suddenly people are talking about respiratory droplets again. And I went to the FDA with my former advisor at MIT, and we spoke to Janet Woodcock, who leads the drug division. And I said, maybe it's true that if you just breathe the salt through the nose into the upper airways, maybe you could have the same effect. And Thomas, the importance of that was that, well, in the United States, that is regulated as a cosmetic, and therefore you can get right in people, and so long as you were just delivering through the nose. And so that was a hypothesis, and I think in the course of any idea creation, you're making bets, taking risks. It turned out to be true. And so then what's happened to the product that I just described, the idea has evolved here over the last 2 years through multiple human studies in this country and overseas. And as I've said to many people, this is the first time in my career where every time I put a shovel into the ground, I'm pulling out gold. So I've been sort of making discoveries over the last couple years, and so it's an idea in that's still in the process of being created.
So would it be fair to say it's taken 21 years to be an overnight success?
Yeah, that's actually really very true. And I guess just to go a little bit further into that, I think you never know as a creator when your idea will impact or matter to many, many, many more people than you. And generally, we're one person in a world of around 8 billion people, and the likelihood that an idea in your head is going to resonate with lots and lots of people is not very great. And that's why great novelists often have one great novel. It's very hard to actually do, and there's a lot that's involved in making that happen. And in my case, this is the first time, although I've been inventing a lot over the last 20 years, where suddenly circumstances, obviously the COVID-19 pandemic and also air pollution and climate change have all sort of had a confluence that this idea happens to matter to a lot of people. And so I'm not sleeping very much these days.
But one of the things that fascinated me about what you say is that we are living in a renaissance, which is, there's a grassroots creative movement. Well, that is exciting. That there's a movement where creativity is going to be spurred, is going to be nothing like we've seen before. And creativity leads to individuals growing, society growing in the right way. That's absolutely fascinating.
It is. Now, this sequel to that observation may be, why are we not in such a obviously fascinating world right now? But let me leave that aside for the moment and say I think it is extremely exciting, and the potential is extremely great. We, as I write in my most recent book, it's really almost inherent to being human and being alive to have new ideas, creative ideas that are responding to needs in your local environment as it is to breathe. We wouldn't be here were we not every day coming up with new ideas. And the younger we are, the more original they are for lots and lots of reasons.
So, David, do you think we're sort of overloaded with so much new technology opportunity that thousands and thousands of new communities are forming on a scale we've never seen before?
I think that's true, and I think that there's a challenge to any renaissance, and especially a renaissance that involves so many people. Right, the Italian Renaissance was a pretty small number of people who were kind of actively involved in that. That was also a period of time, of course, where there was one world, if you will, that was coming to an end, and another world that was about to begin. And we're going through that right now, I believe. I think the institutions we have today, politically, from an education point of view, and almost any point of view, are quite rooted in a reality that's not very connected to our reality today. So there's a major institutional transformation going on, and part of that is that we have this overwhelming interface with technology, and I think that honestly, Thomas, it's really hard to know how those technologies. There clearly is an interweaving of artificial intelligences and human intelligences today, and I think that that's been going on for quite a long time, and what that will look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we don't really know.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
There is a viewpoint that stuck a chord with me, your perspective on education and learning. And you say it's just not about what schools teach us today, but is the emotional side of things. It is the rationalization and questioning and curiosity and inquiry about everything you learn. I love for our users and our listeners to listen to your viewpoint on learning and education.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think if we just leave aside for the moment Harvard University or the elementary school where you went to school, and think about what it meant to be new in the world, thousands of years ago, it's pretty obvious that the most immediately important thing was to be paying attention and to be observing resources and opportunities and dangers and to be responding creatively to those. Reality remains that in confronting very, very new circumstances, the intuitive, emotional, if you will, connection we make with the world around us is the primary one, right? The better we know the world around us, the better quantifiable it is, the more our cognition helps us. And there's lots of circumstances where our cognition is helping us a lot.
David, one of the things that intrigues me, having effectively got 3 digital children in their 20s, they're sort of born digital. They're born on the web. People like Sonny and I use technology and all these machines as tools. To me, they're like cars or trains or planes. We've used everything as a tool. But for my children, the system is inside them. It's like the network, the machine is inside them. It's their life. It's every part of their communication. Do you think we've seen a change in intuition or thought or randomness as a result of the machine being inside them?
I think so, Thomas. I think that, in fact, I have children of that age as well, and my kids actually grew up in Paris and then moved here to the United States. So we were in Paris for many years, and they actually had a very non-electronic childhood, and then showed up in the middle of high school here in a school that had no books, and so suddenly so I've observed with my kids, and I'm sure you've observed with your kids. I think that our children, Gen Z, if you will, are pioneers for sure. I think that they're discovering a relationship with technology that they're still discovering. And my observation is that, and I've seen it with my kids, moving in and out of technology and really trying to understand it themselves. But just to answer more pointedly your question, I think that there's a danger for sure that we face right now, that the instincts and the intuition I mentioned to everything, really, from how we socialize to how we collaborate to how we propagate, are really radically changed in a purely digital existence. And our ability to adapt helpfully, I think, is going to be limited by that, how we strike up that relationship with technology.
We always, in our conversations, end up with a call to action for our listeners. Today, you're going to do a number of things. Take one thing and say, how can you do it differently? How can you be creative? How can you think outside the box? Try to do that and see what happens, and then build upon it. Dr. Edwards, it's a fascinating discussion. I would love to talk about a couple of the topics in the next few opportunities around learning, around creativity and such. But thank you for being on this show. Lovely to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you. It's been really nice.
Thank you, David.
Take care.
For more information on Dr. Edwards' Fend product, please go to hellofend.com.